Hi everyone, it's Lalitaa here, and today's video is all about why do I have an inner critic? Why is it that I have this inner critic who's there in the back of my mind? So what we'll do is we'll talk about what the inner critic is, and we'll talk about why the inner critic is there, but then we'll also focus on ways of managing this inner critic, which I think is really important because it gives you a how-to. What do I now do now that I know that this inner critic is there? So first of all, what is the inner critic? So the inner critic is often a voice, and that's in the background in our minds, and sometimes it can feel like it's at the forefront, and it's often thoughts of I'm not good enough, or I'm different, or I don't fit in, or look at everyone else and look how amazing they are, and I'm not like that. So these inner critic thoughts are negative thoughts that we have of our sense of self, and often they come from our upbringing, us growing up, and things that may have happened. And sometimes people will say, well, I had a really good upbringing, nothing really happened in my upbringing, why do I feel like this about myself? And this is where it's like, right, we need to go back and just make sense of certain experiences that may have happened where we have internalized ourselves to feel like we're different or that we're not good enough. And this is where then the inner critic comes out. So if, for example, you have got a job opportunity come up, and then you're sitting in the waiting room and you can see everyone else who might be part of this job, and instantly your inner critic comes out, well, look at them, look how amazing they are, or look how brilliant they look, or look how confident they are. And what happens is it just slowly just takes us away from the moment because we get so overwhelmed with not feeling good enough in that moment. So the inner critic, it's trying to understand the function. What function does this inner critic play to just stop us from living the life that we want to live, from doing the things that we want to do? Because there might be things that taking a job opportunity or having friends where you want to be yourself, but the inner critic doesn't allow you, because the inner critic is always comparing or seeing everyone else as being up here and putting yourself down here. But what's that about? Why is it that the inner critic does this? Because if we can understand this, it's then putting in the right tools and helping you manage these thoughts moving forward. So when we look at why is it that the inner critic forms in this way, so if we go back to early childhood experiences where things may have happened. So for example, if you've grown up in a family environment where there's 3-4 different siblings, and you're one of the youngest and you've tried to speak out and your siblings have just shut you down, you may have learned from that experience that my voice doesn't matter, or I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough to speak out. And that becomes then the way that you live life moving forward, is that belief of I'm not good enough. And this is where then the inner critic can form from, when you're then trying to speak to your friends, and in the back of your mind you're like, well, no one wants to hear you, no one wants to speak to you, no one's interested in what you've got to say. And what will that do? That will stop you from behaving or speaking out within your friends, because you're trying to protect yourself from not wanting to speak out and be rejected, or not wanting to speak out to be hurt by not being understood or not feeling like you're fitting in. So there's deeper emotions that the inner critic is trying to stop you from feeling, or not wanting you to feel, because it's been there and it didn't like these feelings. But it's also how it's developed into what it thinks that you are now. So it thinks that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And this is where, in this current stage where you're at in life, you may want to be doing certain things and behaving in a certain way, but the inner critic doesn't allow you to. And this is where people can get very frustrated, because it's like, I want to be doing these things, I want to go on stage and talk, or I want to do a presentation at work, or I want to apply for a new job, but I know that I'm not good enough, or I know that I'm not important, or I don't think that I'll be able to do it. And instantly that's the block that stops us from putting ourselves in different situations, in new situations, because the inner critic is like, but you're not good enough, you're not worthy, because of what the inner critic has learned. And it's not about shutting the inner critic down, it's about understanding where is this inner critic formed from, because once upon a time it's come from somewhere. It's a function that it's having in your life right now. There's a reason to why it's there, and we need to understand how or why it's developed to then be able to help you move forward. And moving forward means that, right, thank you for sharing what you think about me, but I know that I am good enough. So what happens is we learn to challenge back that inner critic. But it's trying to understand, when is it that this inner critic is triggered? because everyone's inner critic is different, and everyone's inner critic can prevent them from doing different things. For example, someone's inner critic might be like, nope, we're not doing a new job because, or we're not going on an interview for a new job because you're safe here, you're content here, and going there means then you have to talk to new people, and people aren't going to like you, but people like you here. And this goes deeper into you then not being able to carry out and live the life that you want to live because the inner critic is stopping you. And people say, well, I just want to get rid of this inner critic. And I'll say it's about us managing it and moving forward. So when you're making decisions, this inner critic isn't loud. It's not the one that's dominant within you. But instead you're able to tune in to be like, hang on a minute, what's the bigger picture here? Yes, my inner critic is saying this, but the bigger picture is that I want to take this job. Yes, it's scary. Yeah, I know there may be people in this place where I feel like I don't know what to do or how to talk to them, but I will learn, and I trust myself. I believe that I can do this. So we come from a very different energy, a very different thought process compared to the energy of the inner critic. Because otherwise, if it was up to the inner critic, it wouldn't allow you to do what you want to do or what you're capable of doing. So yes, there are ways of managing the inner critic, but what I would suggest is keep a journal. Start logging down when you notice this inner critic come up. When you notice that this inner critic is presenting itself, where is it that it shows up, and who does it tend to show up around? By us understanding a little bit more about this inner critic, it can help us to learn to manage it and identify when it's going to show up, and then what we need to do to try and manage it. So if you have any questions about the inner critic, or you're wondering how else you can support yourself around the inner critic, please do get in contact. And just if there's any resources or any way that you've learned more about the inner critic, please share. And because I know that there'll be loads of other people who will be interested to read more about the inner critic, and just learning how to live your best life without the inner critic stopping you, and realizing that you are important, you are good enough, you are worthy, and not allowing the inner critic to stop you. So on that note, I am going to leave it there. And of course, if there's any questions, please feel free, just put them in below and I'll always get back to you. And have an amazing day. And remember, you're worthy, you're important, and you are good enough. Take care. Bye-bye.